Well, we're going to, I guess, try to press on, but as many of you, I'm sure, out in the TV audience knows, we were notified just before we started taping tonight that Elvis has died again. But I guess we'll try to press forward as best we can. And here we go. Requests for the Kyroots have just gotten through being read. To save himself, and Kyroots said, to save himself the inconvenience of having a family of his own, this one man would call himself up and leave messages on his answering service, etc. And one of the recent ones was, here is the point, the message he left was, doesn't it tell you something about man's intrinsic intellectual condition that everyone has to pretend to know more than they do? Now, if we were ordinary, God forbid, or Elvis wouldn't have died on us again. You could take something like that as being almost a grammar school critique of man and say, well, everybody, or many people, but if you're in grammar school, you tend to exaggerate anyway. But you could say, well, all sorts of people. The world is just full of people who exaggerate and pretend to know more than they do. You know, big deal. That isn't what it says. Consider what it said. Consider, and even an ordinary person, if you want to play that part, I'll lead you along. Even an ordinary person could go. Everybody, all choirs need a director. You got to have somebody to aim at. Doesn't it tell you something about man's intellectual condition that everybody has to pretend to know more than they do? But if you took it that way and took it not as an attack, but took it as an observation of which you had never availed yourself, it's not an attack that everybody, not a few people, that everybody pretends to know more than they do. And if you had any intelligence yourself, bordering on the non-average, you'd say, by looking at yourself, and of course yourself, if you're average and ordinary, you consider that you're probably the Saks Fifth Avenue of the mental world, fashion world. And so, but once you realize, well, yeah, of course there are conditions, I know, that force you to do it, but there are times that even you pretend to know more than you do. So if you take it, just for the sake of dressing up for a moment, that everybody pretends to know more than they do under certain conditions, albeit perhaps that you're forced to. That is, you're trying to hit up on this girl, and she's saying something like, well, I wouldn't go out with a man that doesn't support the right side in the present unpleasantness in the erstwhile republic country of Yugoslavia, and you have to think right quick, goddamn, I saw something about that in a Time magazine, and she's about to walk off to go over here to this football player, and you have to go, that's right, I had an aunt who was a Serb. And you're pretending. She says, oh, you know about it. And you go, well, how should I know what a Serb is? I was just trying to make you the point that there could be just unusually excruciating, untoward, unexpected conditions that might force even a person of your intelligence and integrity to pretend to know more than you do, right? So then if you take it... Some people have a harder time rounding up a little sex than others, you know. I mean, who am I to say if you're hard enough up that you got to start lying about Balkan politics, you know, to get laid? It ain't none of my business. I have no judgment to make, especially since there are rumors. Forget Elvis, there are rumors that Marshal Tito's still alive, and so I am not about to badmouth. If you take it as some sort of given that everyone at times pretends to know more than they do, all right? Then back to the Kyroot, it says that everybody has to pretend to know more than they do. I guess the only reason, besides just to use up the tape that I spent going through all that, is if you understand that, and I'll go ahead and stop all this stuff about suggest and pretend for the sake of argument, and we'll classify it under FF. Bloody fact. That everyone pretends to know more than they have to because they have to. Life makes them do it. Now, if you see that, just think at the new room, the new time available you have for a fresh hobby. Because a large part of your mental activity, that is, of crushing other people under the boot of your keen observation, to be able, especially if you just got through having a vasectomy and you're not in the mood, just then. To stand at a party and in a superior, condition, laugh at these other, fellow human beings trying to hit upon women by pretending to know more than politics and current events and other things than they do. Just think, if you got over laughing at other people, criticizing other people, that there it is, it flashes, it's not just people at cocktail parties, as you should know, that if you've got any eyesight, they flash on the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And the man starts saying about, here's what we should do and so, and forget the actual facts, whether he knows about what's going on in some part of the world or something about the economy. You just begin to see that everybody pretends to know more than they do. And it can be explained. If you had to stop, well, I had to say it for the girl to ignore me. The Prime Minister says, well, I had to say that. I can't, when a reporter says, well, how do you think that the European community should respond to this kind of breakup of some of the more stable countries like Yugoslavia? And there he stands, and CNN and everybody else is filming the man. He has to say, well, I think it's the sort of thing that my Prime Minister, my associates, my aides, we have been discussing this, and we're working on it now. And if you get good, it doesn't take, all you got to do is be unordinary, and you can hear. It's no big secret. The man is pretending, I guess you're ordinary, you say he's lying. He just got caught flat-footed and says, well, we do so-and-so. You just hear it from the top to the bottom, from bricklayers and bars to the President of the United States. Everybody pretends to know more than they do. But you relieve your nervous system of, if you intend to do something extraordinary, of a very useless burden. If you see that the key word is that everybody has to pretend. And once you realize that, well, one down and 100 to go. Well, when you start talking about politics around the Adriatic Sea, of course, it gets very time-consuming. If you think they're just fighting over small stuff, has anybody read they're now fighting over who actually deserves the name of Macedonia? Where is Shakespeare, and who was that broad he was running around with, Gertrude? A name's a name? Jesus. Are they taking it to extremes? There were two connected here. And somebody just hit one of them. And Kyroots said, only the weak have a duty. And it was a couple of pages later. Then Kyroot looks back and says, only the weak have a duty, the strong an aim. We could certainly be here all night unless I just say one or two things and you see it. Duty sounds great. There have been all sorts of attempts, and even under different names, that would appear to be some sort of activity that was revolutionary. All the way from metaphysical to spiritual to areas that apparently had nothing to do with it, like some of the Zen martial arts. That duty was a big thing. And I repeat, I was not trying to lay it with some inseparable connection to spiritual quest and attempts, because quite ordinary people will speak very highly of duty. That I guess we could even somebody could define the distinction between man, or civilized men, and uncivilized men as a sense of duty. That it was they could hold it up as the banner of being cultured, being decent, that you have some sense of duty, that you would not steal from your fellow man at your neighbor's cave when he had to go off to hunt, even if only his wife there and she's sick, PMS or something, that you go there and steal all of his food while he's gone, but you have some sense of duty. It's not just laws keep you from doing it, because when you lived in caves, there wasn't many cops around. So duty, at first, can sound like, and it has for years and years, a great thing. Kyroot had the audacity, whatever that means, on page 7 to say, only the weak have a duty. And if we were here to attack Kyroot, and he's not in the room, so we could take a shot, I'll just speak ordinarily, you could say, boy, this is really getting chintzy. This is getting, all right, too much. Only the weak have a duty, because it sounds as though it has got to be an attack on duty. 2 pages later, Kyroots looks back. In other words, he just gave 1 page, and he's doing like an expanded version of only the weak have a duty. It's only the weak have a duty, the strong have a name. If you can see it, no matter how great duty sounds, and like everything else, if you thought that you were being able to think in an extraordinary manner, you would still hope that everyone else around you has a sense of duty, because that's certainly not an attack on duty. If they have a parade like Americans, or even New Yorkers, New Yorkers for a sense of duty, if you don't have to go out of your way, throw them $1 or sign a petition and say, right on, you should be in favor of duty. But in a sense, it is a substitute. It is at even a more basic level, you might say, than what appears to be the psychological or spiritual, intellectual aspects of religion, for instance, which all gets down to why men invented psychology, which I don't guess we'll get to. If you recall one of the later Kyroots tonight, they did that. Men came up with the idea of psychology only after desperation. It was only once they realized where the combination of the study of biology and chemistry was about to go, then suddenly they decided, oh, no, wait, no. And then it was psychology. Similar to this, a sense of duty is to electrochemistry duty is to a name and understanding as psychology would be to electrochemical engineering on a biological level. We should all be in favor of duty, but it is, in a sense, a substitute. It is being civilized, in a sense, is a substitute. It's a necessary substitute. There is no alternative. It's why you can't really call it a substitute. I only do it because we're here and I can't be fired. And we're not getting paid, and there's nobody to... But civilization's a substitute, unless you say, well, a substitute for what? And then they got you. Well, of course, if you were a priest and it was, let's get the priest drunk day, and you didn't know anybody, and they said, what's a substitute for what? You could probably babble something like, well, knowing what you're doing. And then they'd kick you. Because there is no answer to it. But being civilized, the whole idea of civilization, there was a Kyroot from last time that nobody requested. I know sounded weird. It even looked weird on paper. But it says being civilized is an excuse for being civilized. In other words, if you could be civilized, you wouldn't have to be made to be civilized. It's not just a play on words. It could sound that way. But the whole thing about, let's take an individual man, or if you're good, humanity. The whole point of whatever forces were behind it, let's just say life itself, evolution, the forces behind it to make men civilized, consider that a whole term in quotation marks. To make men civilized, the only reason it exists is for the fact that men can't be civilized. Only the weak have a duty. Only the weak have a duty, the strong have a name. And instead of strong, if that sounded as though it were getting too political for you sissies, you could say only the weak have a duty, or only the dumb have a duty. At least Kyroots didn't start with that. The intelligent have a name. It would be that only the weak are civilized, which, one more time, nothing wrong with being civilized. You should pray, if you're so inclined, metaphorical at least, that everyone stay civilized. Who wants to live amongst a bunch of bricklayers or Baptist ministers on the weekend, or in a trailer park? You want to live amongst the civilized, you've got to live amongst anybody. But only the dumb are civilized. Only the dumb have a sense of duty. Only the weak feel guilty. And of course, we're talking about almost everybody in the world. We're talking about almost all of you most of the time. And you can't help it. But just because you can't help it, just because something is natural, doesn't mean that it's the most profitable individually. So only the weak have a duty, the strong have a name. And only the Kyroots show has 5 minutes left. I'm sorry, they just said that Elvis is still dead. A lad happily observed, I'll read it. Isn't it neat, said he, how you can put your transmission in reverse, but as long as you keep the clutch in, you can still roll forward. And Kyroots pointed out that he suspects that this kid has gotten two hobbies kind of mixed up in one. So if you'd like to consider that, and the whole idea that you can put the thing in reverse. Now, some of you only know automatic transmission. You can put the thing in reverse once you stop, but as long as you hold in the clutch, you can stay on the hill. And you got the transmission in reverse, and you can roll forward. And he said, isn't that neat? And Kyroots said, well, maybe he's got... my head's not hurting. I'm trying to say, forget cars and transmissions and think about, the brain and ideas. Not me. $19. I'll do a short version. It was a long one. But a guy got to thinking. He began pondering why it might be and for what purpose it would serve. It seemed like the first, he's just conjecturing, based upon his observations and etc. That why the first sound that men might have made after the gods gave them after life and evolution, gave them the ability to think, that the very first sound would be some sort of moan of despair, which I'll go ahead and stick in my 3 cents worth and say that is a fair observation, regardless of what some religion said, that, the first words that Eve said, you ain't gonna put that thing in my, well, trust me, in a sense, well, what do babies do? We're going to play metaphors and symbolism. What's the first thing? A baby comes in the world, what's the first thing it does? It goes, ah! Like, Kyroots was just a little more poetic, a moan of despair, so we'll assume it's not just a little 32-year-old baby, that it's now a more civilized, like a young person or a teenager or a grown person just with a college degree. But one of the first sounds they make after being able to think is some kind of moan, a whine. He just said he found it interesting. It's a nice thing to live in America and everybody's welcome to their own opinion. Pardon, I didn't mean to get into political editorial. Especially they asked us not to be mentioning specific countries since we moved the operations here to Bergen, Norway. The ones I'm looking at that were requested here and turning over for those of you who don't know is things I've either already hit or was about to tie into something else, etc. Either that or it's none of your business why I'm not reading them. Well, here's one I'll read again. I don't know what we're going to say about it. One of the semi-official voices of one city stated, quote, we're quoting this official or semi-quasi, men have their worst thoughts in sleep between the hours of 1 and 4 p.m. And the citizen said, well, how about those on the graveyard shift, the night shift? And the voice replied, well, they're just going to have to work it out. Well, some of these, I don't really know anything profitable to point out, except I keep hoping, I'm sure Kyroots does, for them to be sort of encouraging for you to realize, well, life is on guard, life is active, knows what it's doing, looking after your best interest. Sleep well at night. Especially if you got 2 or 3 Doberman pinchers and a couple of guns beside the bed. And live up in a tree. And Kyroots said, the universe's sweetest sound is the human voice. You might consider it the secondary world, of course. The universe's sweetest sound is the human voice, inasmuch as it is the music for all else that follows. Anytime you feel inclined, which there can be Kyroots or little jokes made that about. In fact, there was one you recall a night or so ago. Supposedly, somebody wrote the show and said that the use of profanity, the use of profane words, shows a lack of intelligence. And I guess it was Kyroots. Somebody responded and said, "Hell, sir, the use of words shows a lack of intelligence." There's been a string, I'm sure, that you could, with my help, if it need be, that would sound as though they were direct, not even subtle. Don't write me. Check your dictionary. A subtle attack, sometimes directly attack, it could sound like, on words. If people talk too much, or almost all talk might be too much, and etc. But that means here, amongst other things. Of course, it's half of a dirty gesture in what used to be Yugoslavia. Of course, since it's only half a country, I guess it'll work now. At least maybe the Croats take that offensively. And then that one gets the Serbs. I don't know. The universe's sweetest sound is the human voice, inasmuch as the music for all else that follows. The easy way out again. Think about it. 60 seconds. Well, you're fooling me. It's really 75. Okay. Down the alley behind the barn, two things were talking. "You know," said one of them, "if the gods really liked us, they would have given us a playground as soon as they made us." No one replied, "Hey, fool, just look up." And Kyroots said one guy could think better when he ran. And perforce, him living in the city and all, he got himself some athletic sheets. Perforce of him living in the city, that he's already stated he can think better when he's active. Therefore, he got some athletic sheets. I don't know what else to say. Well, there is an addendum that when it came to Euro sports, this one guy refused to cheer for the home team, lest it cause him to stay stuck there. We'd be out of tape, folks. Good night.